Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm really excited because today I have another wonderful guest joining me. I have Hailey Ellis-Kelley, who is an entrepreneur, podcast host, and TEDx speaker based in Central Illinois. So Hailey is founder of 1 Year From Now, a 12-month life and business growth program for high impact entrepreneurs that helps them create a compelling vision for their life and work and then bring it all into a reality in 1 year, which I love. And Hailey is also formally trained in growth and human development with a BS in organizational and leadership communication from Illinois State University, go Redbirds, and credentialing in interpersonal neurobiology from the Mindsight Institute. So all of these words are words that I love. All of these areas are areas that I love. Hailey runs a multi six-figure coaching business, multi six-figure coaching business, and has clocked over 650 face-to-face client hours with amazing, extraordinary human beings from industries across the business landscape, art, real estate, tech, food, law, and more. So I'm stoked to have you on. Thank you so much for your time. I know it's very late there. It's definitely past my bedtime there. The reason, and I love that intro, that bio of you, because it speaks to the reason that we sort of wanted to connect and have this conversation, because you are hella successful, like super successful, and yet, but
yeah, and also,
yes, and we're here to talk about divorce and parenting while also being successful in business. Yeah. So huge topics. I have questions, but thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me. I was so excited when you reached out, and I think this is a really interesting conversation to have, because it's a thing that, even though I think it's upwards of, like, at least in the US, it's like 50% of the population, like literally half of the adult humans will have experienced divorce in their life. And the fact that we don't talk about it, and especially don't talk about it as it pertains to its impact on our entrepreneurship, our ability to create, to make things, to build stuff, is like, oh, are we not talking about this? We should be talking about this.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, for starters, there's a stigma, like, you hear about, like, there's a stigma of, and I think it's also stigma as well as from my understanding of an experience I've not lived, but as well as the concern or fear of judgment. They sort of, that takes up a lot of energy as well. And then having kids in the mix. I mean,
yeah, it's my ex-husband and I got divorced last summer. But we didn't start telling people and talking about it until well after it was done and complete, because even though it's my story and his story, it's also our kid's story. We have a son, his story, it's my mother-in-law's story, it's my sister's story, right? All of our family has been impacted by this. And so it's a very interesting kind of line to walk of wanting to talk about it, because it actually is a really common thing that people experience.
Yeah.
And the details of the story don't just belong to me, like they belong to these other people as well. And trying to strike that balance between, yes, it's part of their story, but it's still my story and I get to own it. But how much do I share and when and what? And so, and just the general stigma on top of all of it, right? So I understand why we don't talk about it more, but I think part of my kind of offering to the world at this moment is just to go, like, yeah, let's have some conversations about it.
Yeah, just if nothing else, maybe just to bring an understanding for people that this is an experience that people do go through. And I imagine that it would feel big, and it is life-changing. So, like, it's all a practice in empathy. It's all a practice in understanding other people's lived experiences without knowing it, but understanding that there is a different lived experience to our own, right?
Yeah, I think it's, so the through line, I think, between this experience and other hard experiences I've had in my life. I lost my mother in 2017, 2018. And the different griefs that I've experienced in my life, there is that through line of grief and then also trying to function as a human. And so I think part of, as I've shared this with my clients who have chronic illnesses or who have, lost a child or lost a parent or going through their own separation or divorce, it's funny because we don't talk about it, but there's so many other stories of grief and trying to manage this big chunk of grief and process it as you can. And grief is, a conglomeration of emotions. It's not just sadness. It's also anger and wonder and hope and sometimes relief and all these other feelings. But also you just have to produce your pod. You just have to go to work. And just now it's time for soccer practice. That's it.
You've got to do the human adult things, and how do you have room for that? The bit that another bit, not all of it interests me, but the bit that I really can't grasp, even on a personal level, is the idea of being a successful woman in business, whether you are an entrepreneur or a professional, right? Yeah. Being a successful woman in business and having parenting responsibilities in the mix. Did you start your business before or after you became a parent?
So I started my business because I became a parent. So I worked at I had a corporate job. I was in management and worked for a technology and management consulting firm in their HR department. And I had my son, and instead of enjoying the fresh baby, and this is wonderful, I was so stressed out. Because he didn't sleep, so I wasn't sleeping and going to work.
Yeah.
Whole thing. And so I ended up leaving my job to kind of have the space to parent, thinking I'd be a stay-at-home parent. I couldn't hack it. Just straight up shout out to all stay-at-home parents, because I just straight up
I love that ownership.
Yeah, no, I just for real couldn't do it. I could not do it. And so to give myself some relief and to basically to get the support I wanted at home, I needed to make the money to pay for the support to do the things. So
yeah, as it happens, yes.
Right. I started a business from home as a result of becoming a parent and wanting to be a present parent, and also find my own definition. Is too strong a word, but what does it mean for Hailey to be a parent, right? Not the way my sister's parent or the way I was parented, or even my ex-husband's family, who was lovely. But for me, what did I want my relationship to my child to be like, and what did I want my identity as a parent to be like? Kind of the same way that I do with my work. Just what do I want this business to look like? What do I want my role within this asset to look like? I find a lot of similarities personally between parenting and leadership development and leadership skills.
Yeah. Do you find that the more because I also know the journey of running a business and owning a business and building a business and creating a business is not external to an internal journey as well.
Right.
You look at your own shit, even more, it makes you face it. It makes you face it so much. Do you find that I lost my question for a moment, but do you find that your journey of understanding more of who you are has allowed you to be more of the different versions of you and iterations of you while parenting and businessing?
Oh yeah, to me, my parenting and my work go together. Like I said, the birth of my son and wanting more flexibility with my time to be with him and to parent was kind of what started things off. But when I started my business, I only worked 2 days a week, 4-hour blocks, because I could get the woman who lived next door to us to come over and watch my son.
Yeah.
But just so having that as the frame, the original frame for my work, my original 4-hour work week was because that's how much time I had.
Yeah, that's all you had.
That's all we had. And
Uh-huh.
so when the 4-hour work week came out, I'm like, oh, that's cute. I've been doing that, but that's cute.
Should have wrote a book about
Yeah,
it.
talk about it. But I think all parents that are working, like
Mm,
we so naturally understand things like flexibility and time blocking, and we may not call it these things, or how to prioritize tasks, how to delegate, or how to um some of my favorite memories when my son was like probably 2 and 3 was he would work with me, meaning like we'd make mama's list of I'm going to work these 4 hours and the 4 things I'm going to do. And then here's Sam's list. And Sam, here are the 4, and it's like 2 coloring sheets. And then you're going to have snack. And then you can
aw,
do this with the dog and like
yeah.
work together. um, and it's funny, actually, now I think about it. He was home, he's 7 now in 2nd grade, was home
Mm,
from Friday. And I just realized we did another list. Like we did
yeah.
actually do time blocking again. So we still do that. But a lot of the way that I work was born out of
Mm,
needing to work and wanting to be an available parent, but also to teach him well and to hold boundaries with him well. So
mhm.
something I would coach clients on a lot is, they're like, well, I can't because, if my kids are home, they'll come in. And they're like, why doesn't your son ever hardly come in? And I'm like, because we've been talking about mommy's boundaries for a long time. Like we've been
Yeah.
having conversations for a long time. Kids are actually remarkably good at when we're able to hold those boundaries, they're able to hold those boundaries. So that kind of
Mhm.
challenged my
Well,
ability.
it's leading yourself, which
Yes.
leads them. And I think I just remembered that original question back then. Like, it's like, the more that you lead yourself, the more capable, but effective, I guess, you are of leading there, because it, like, kids respond to modeling, not telling, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's such a great way to put that, Jess. Like that's exactly what it is. He responds. A little context. I am known as not the mean mom, but like when kids come to my house, people notice that like I talk to them like adults, like I ask them how they
Mhm.
are, what do they like to eat, what do they like to snack on, and then I also say, hey, so here's how I'm going to communicate with you. When you communicate with me or I ask you a question, like I expect a response because this is my level of
Mhm.
how I want your mom to engage with me, your dad, here's how people engage with me. So I model that for kids and they model that
Mm.
to me and it ends up working really well. So I'm the strict mom,
I
but
love that, though.
yeah, we all have a
It's
great time.
again, it's like it's guiding them, it's modeling. It's not saying, hey, you're not allowed to make a mistake, you have to be perfect at all,
Oh,
and not saying you have to be at this level without practicing being at that adult level. But it's, hey, we're going to have a conversation and we're going to make this a normal thing, and then
yeah.
it opens up communication anyway.
And they like, I love children because they ask questions very directly of just like,
Hmm.
why do I have
Oh,
to do it that way? I'm like, great, let's talk about it.
yeah.
Um, and again, it's not, I say I'm strict with air quotes for those of you who are just
Yeah.
listening, there's around, because I do have a standard for how people talk to me across the board, children or
Mhm.
adults, but also like my best friend's kid was over New Year's Eve. She and I are into Harry Potter. We're both Slytherins. We hosted a tea party together. And like,
I love that so much.
yes, we do cooking challenges all the time with like, I do fun things too.
Yeah. Oh, I believe you. Yes.
It's this level of like, hey, you and I are in this thing together. Like you and I are
Mhm.
building something together. Here's how I want to be talked to and respected. And I spend a lot of time listening to like their thoughts and
Mm.
questions and their concerns. And it really, to me, mirrors how I would talk to someone who is on my team, because when they're good, they do good work. Like when they're
Yeah.
good, participate in what we are building together as an organization. And with kids, it's like, yeah, they're just participating in the culture we're building as a family or as a found family group. It's those two things mirror each other very well. And it's not telling, like you said, it's me modeling and then
Mm.
also being available for their input too, right?
Mhm.
Not like do what I say or else, but like here's my standard. What do you need? Where can we meet?
Yeah, I love that too. There's something really special in that because it's this co-creation of a life together, right? Like, and I'm super interested. I can't wait to see what your relationship together is like when he's a teenager and even as a young adult, because while I'm sure, because humans are involved, while I'm sure it's not going to be perfect, I there's something special about enabling children to be an active creator in their lives, and it gives them consent about things because it gives them a voice about things, and it gives them reasoning skills and the skills to be able to, if they're bored, not rely on someone else to fulfill that boredom, but to tap into the creative part of their brain and go, oh, well, create something, like, using their imagination to go, what do I feel like doing? What could I do?
Yeah.
It's all of those things. And it's such an important developmental thing, but it's such an important relationship piece too.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping. And I just to because I can hear myself and maybe I sound like I'm a parenting guru and I never met
Oh no.
Right. Like there's two things I want to cite. One is just, even though we have all these conversations in my household, I still have to, like we were saying, the boredom thing.
Mm.
Multiple times a week. I'm so bored. Oh my gosh. And okay, what would you like to do? What can you find? So they're still
Yeah.
absolutely, and he's
Well,
7,
he's
but they're
7. Yeah.
still prompting. And if I'm being honest, like there's so much of parenting that I actively dislike. Like I will just say that out loud. There's so much of it that I actively do not enjoy, in terms of like managing a household and making sure underwear is clean, and why can we never find matching socks, and why do second graders have, I've got a lot of feelings about parenting. But what I mostly care about is that relational dynamic. Everything else I can, like, I know I'm gonna screw up. I have ADD. I'm terrible at matching socks. We're gonna be late on school projects. I don't even care. But the relational part is the part that I've decided to hold on to and to care about, because I think that's everything, right? Like when we think about, when you have a team, when you're collaborating with, a peer or whatever, that relational dynamic, the ability to actually collaborate. So two people coming together to create something that they could not create individually, that's magic. That makes everything. That's the difference between a team that you have to micromanage and you get to just piece out for 3 weeks at a time, right? It's everything. And so that's the part that I'm most holding on to with the parenting, and letting, y'all, I let a lot of stuff go. Like, just, I can't do all the things. Hold on to this part.
Yeah, and I think that's like, as someone who doesn't yet have children and who would like to at some point in the future,
Yeah.
that's the piece for me, even, like, that I struggle with, because it's like, well, you have to do it all, and that feels overwhelming because I hate the idea of the housekeeping of it. Like,
Yeah. It's awful. Let's just say it's terrible. It's awful. I hate it. I do not find joy in it. I can't, like, find the joy and care for. No, I don't.
No.
I can't.
Yeah.
I can't. I'm who I am as a parent. But we will have amazing parties and great conversations and take wonderful trips. We'll do that stuff. But
do you think a lot of that is also giving, like, and this probably speaks to both the parenting and the separation and divorce piece as well, is giving yourself permission to not like something and say that you don't like it, and also really just lean into structures of support that help you get through that too?
absolutely. I think entrepreneurship has been, choosing to be an entrepreneur has been such a symbiotically helpful relationship to, so I think of my work and then I think of, my personal life, and they are symbiotically, like, in a relationship together, because my ability to be able to, source myself, to, like, make sure I am well resourced, my ability to search myself and find answers, my ability to know what it even means to trust my gut, like what does my gut feel like, anxiety or immediate feelings, my understanding of emotion, all of that is what helped me navigate the divorce process and the separation process. And even, I mean, so we didn't tell our families until it was complete because of the reaction we knew our families would have.
Yeah.
And so being on the phone with, you know, people who I know love us, but are crying and like, can you do anything? And whatever, and not seeing it for what it is, which is people who love us, who are hurting, and not like, oh, did I make the wrong choice? Am I okay? No,
Yes.
just like, oh, they're having feelings.
Mhm.
I have space for their feelings, right? Which is what I do as a coach. And so the coaching and the work, my entrepreneurship fueled that. My
Yeah.
personal has fueled my work so much. Like when I think about entrepreneurship, it's not just like I chose to have a business and it's so fun. It feels to me like a lifelong calling, I am a creator. I'm a person who
Mhm.
makes things. It doesn't even matter what the thing is or what shape the business is or whatever it is. I'm a person that makes things because because of the experience that I have making things and how my life informs the business asset that I'm working on and how that asset then informs me. Like I don't
Mhm.
give that up. Like I can never give that up.
It sounds like it's self-trust. Like it's this forming of self-trust that you've developed over time. Because as soon as you said the piece about like being on the phone and it's the difference between going, oh, they're having emotions about this, because like family do get attached to our relationships as well,
Yes.
versus like, so it's their emotion, they're having an emotional response because this is all brand new to them,
Yes.
versus immediate self-doubt, which
Yeah.
I'm sure is something that runs rampant for people who are parenting, people who are going through divorce, people like in any scenario in life you can find self-doubt, right?
Yeah. Especially when vulnerability is so high. So the way I like to talk
Mm.
about our whenever we are extremely vulnerable, our brain loves to play our like greatest hits, which is like our
Yes.
key thoughts, right? So whatever you're most practiced at, when you're vulnerable and like the shields are down, your brain will start playing that stuff of, do I make good decisions? Am I okay? Is this right? My favorite is, for my brain anyway, is you should have known better. You're doing it wrong and you should have known better. That's my
Oh
brain's
yeah,
favorite.
I feel
And
that
so
one.
yeah, your defenses go down, brain just starts like Netflix, like, oh, do you want this next? You feel vulnerable.
Titles you might also like.
Real. Like that is literally how our brains operate, right? Like that's how they were
Absolutely.
great. And so because I know that and have had the thanks entrepreneurship, but the ability to be regularly vulnerable and regularly rejected and regularly in these hard spots, when it comes up in my personal life, I can see it for what it is of like, oh, there's not actually a problem here. I can see they're having, emotions. I'm feeling vulnerable. So if my brain is offering, you've done something wrong, you should have made a different decision, I can see it for what it is, which is just, oh, you're feeling bad? How about these thoughts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. How was the leading yourself or leading your son via leading yourself process in that divorce process when it came to any conversations with him about that?
Yeah, it sucked. Like, I'll just be
Yeah.
honest, it sucked.
Yeah.
What what I did to prepare beforehand, first of all, was so I made myself a divorce decision matrix, which isn't,
Mm.
it was like a thing I shared with my ex. I wasn't sharing it with anybody, but a list of questions that I could ask myself for when my brain was like,
Oh, yeah.
go back now. Because as amicable as our divorce was, this sucks. Like, it's not a great process. So it was just a thing that a touchstone kind of. And I think two of the questions were just, what would it cost to stay? What would it cost to go?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to pay that? Do you want to pay this? Which one do you want to pay?
Mm.
Um, and, there's some other questions in there, but that's ultimately what it came down to. And so just having the self-trust, that foundation in myself, the ownership of the decision
Mm.
is wildly important. It wasn't because of him. It wasn't because of circumstances. It wasn't for all it's because I wanted it. And I wrestled with that for a long time, but also that ultimately is the only truth that I could stand on, that, because otherwise, if any circumstances change, if he suddenly became different or whatever, would I stay? And the answer is still no, right? So like, I wasn't
Yeah.
gonna, is anything else but me. This is my choice. So anyway, all that to say is I have this foundation of making a decision for myself, knowing what it would cost, deciding to pay that, and then having my back with coaching, with therapy, a lot of my own like self-consideration protocols of sleeping and hydrating and crying and laying on the floor and calling friends, all of those things.
Perfect. Yes.
Yeah, because the outcome was going to be worth it. So leading to kind of the conversation with my son, we kind of organized ourselves to, again, finish most of the process. We can do one thing at a time. First, we finish the process, then we will tell him, because he's little, he doesn't even know.
Yeah.
And it was an amicable divorce. We were still living in the same household, so he did not realize, kind of his life was shifting in a way. But we also set him up with a therapist before we told him, so he had rapport with somebody, and then kind of had that conversation with him, an initial conversation with him, and that sucked. But again, it's how I would prepare for any major shift in any, I'm using the word organization, and I know it potentially sounds sterile, but any organism, right? Like any group, or it's a living organism.
It's change management in a way, like
it is, right?
So like, it's change management. It's what change management should be in organizations, like it's
so preparing beforehand. We had the conversation, we made sure that we were both in the house that weekend, and we just did stuff as a family unit that weekend, so that as he had questions, they could just come out. And we weren't going to, my ex and I had talked about how much we would tell him of what, just kind of like let him ask questions and just like let stuff come up real randomly while we were fishing. And then, 4 days later, he'd have another question about like what happens to his toys, and do I get too critical, and are my grandmas all still my grandmas, and
oh yeah,
all the questions, right, which are all totally legitimate. And so it sucked, and also it felt like I feel good about how we kind of prepared for, in a way, like you said, like a change management situation. Like if this was happening in any other organism, if a major rupture was happening in any other organism or organization, how might one handle it? How might one prepare for that?
Yeah, I love that. So if we flip it for a moment as well, how do you feel like, or how are you aware of the experience impacting or changing or growing how you show up in business?
Yeah. I'm afraid to say this out loud, because I'm sure 10 years from now I'm gonna be like, oh, she had no idea what, past me had no idea. But I really feel like there is not a lot that I can't do now. Like I left that, it's like, it might take some time. I'm gonna mess up a whole bunch, but there are very few things that I think I could not survive after the year that I had. So like, that year of like, so that was my, just for numbers and sharing, that was the second year I did 200K-ish USD, but I did it in about half the time. Like I literally was working like 3 days a week instead of 5 days a week, which before I did a little bit more than 200K, but did it in like really working hard to make $200,000.
So it showed you that like the foundations you'd set up as well were there, and they were strong. So there's a proving, like not a proving, but there's a
it was
proof in
like
that.
Like proofing my methodologies, how I organize myself around business, the things I say about work, the stuff I say. I talk a lot with my clients about grieving and feeling their feelings as a way to process and be clear-headed, to come to their work clear-headed. And so it very much was like, I now know for a fact that my methodology works very well. Like that's all I did for a whole year. And I didn't double in half the time, but I did make as much in half the time as I did the year before, and half the effort, with my mind going to, I mean, just the sheer logistics of a divorce, y'all. I don't recommend it. It's very, there's always forms to fill out. But even about the son, my kid, and the real estate, and what happens with our cars, and what do I do with my engagement ring,
Oh,
and
yeah.
yeah, just like
It's all of the mental and emotional energy that we would love to spend on our businesses, right? Because we care about our businesses, and then spend on our families otherwise. But it's like, oh shit, now it's this whole other entity that I have to.
yes, and I want to take care of and do right by myself, but also, again, I don't hate my ex. I want to do right by him and make sure we're taking care of our kid. And so the energy expenditure was wild, and they
Mm,
still made $200,000 last year. Like, that's wild.
which is amazing.
Yeah. And so coming out of it, I feel like, good job, Hailey, your methodology worked. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, that feels good. And I mean, I'll also say alongside that, I significantly changed the shape of my practice. 1 year from residency didn't exist. This was 1 year from now, the residency's first year of
Yeah.
life. So I launched it, had a over 100K launch, like right at the end of the year before, right? So I sold it in like November, probably like October, November, December, to do a cohort that would run the whole 12 months. So the very
Yeah.
first cohort. But then I went to launch again in March, and I had a $0 launch. Like, let's talk about that. I got all excited.
Please. Yeah.
And straight up had a $0 launch, which was so like, 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 trauma on top of trauma.
It is, because like there's the mental planning that you sort of do. You're like, yeah, okay, I'm going to play with the numbers and this is what that means. And then you're also like, shit, like now what?
And at a time in which I could really use the cash. Again, if we're just being really, I really have used the cash, you guys.
Yeah.
And so, having a over 100K launch and then a $0 launch that spring, recognizing like, oh, now that I've been in it a few months, how I sold it the first time is not quite what it is. And here are the things I needed to change, and working through that throughout the year, trying to make money and also do the manage the divorce. And actually had another business asset at the time as well. I usually keep a small portfolio of businesses because I just like building things. And sold my ownership shares to my partner for, that cash flow for me personally, but also just because I had just no capacity, just like tapped out, like I don't have any more mental space. And so a lot of what I teach now and coach now was so informed by that year that I had. That was like, yeah, I mean, you could write it on paper in one way of, I made 200K in 3 days a week, which is true. Technically, that's true. And also, like there was so much other things that were happening as well.
Yeah, like what's the story behind it? What's the I don't even want to use the word journey because that feels like paying it off as well. But what is the growth behind it and the work that was done? Because I would say that given everything else you were working through and working on, you were actually working just as much or more, and it was benefiting your business. Not the divorce was benefiting your business, but your process through these big life changes was beneficial to your business because it all speaks to each other.
Yeah, yes. And like on this end of it, yes, I agree. Inside of it, I was like, no, this is anything else. The universe teaches something else. Good on the education. But you're right. There is what I learned. I could not sell the original, and I don't think the original version of the residency was bad, but I just know so much more now, and I've experienced so much, and that allowed my clients to share so much more, and to gave me the ability to have the capacity for their whole lives, right? So I'm not a coach that's just like, I just want to look at the numbers and the strategy. I'm an entrepreneurship coach, which means I work with the entrepreneur, and there's so much life that happens in and around and through the work that I have a way deeper understanding of now than I did, a year ago.
Yeah, of course. What would be one crucial piece of advice that you would give to any woman or any person going through something and who are in it where they can't see with the gift of hindsight and retrospect, what would be one piece of advice or a reminder or a truth?
I think it's to not lose sight of the fact that you're a person. You are an entrepreneur and you're a parent and you're a partner and, but you're a person actually, which means you have a biology and emotions and desires and dreams, and just like let yourself be in the moment you are in, which sucks because in those moments we want to like be out of them, but just like let and be in it. And it's okay that it's hard and it sucks, and it's okay that you find moments of joy and relief, and it's okay that it's hard again after that. Like just let yourself be a person and have that human experience is actually the fastest way through.
Yeah, it is. It feels like the hardest because you're looking at it, you're like, there's so much shit to wade through here. There is so much that I don't know that I'm gonna have to pick up and figure out how heavy it is, and then figure out what to do with it, and that this whole process,
like, and all of that. And
yeah,
I tell my clients this all the time, and one of them actually remarked back to me. She was like, "Damn it, you're right." Like the fast to just be present in it sucks and sounds like such a coachy thing to say, but it really is.
It's cliche because it's true. Like it's just like, and it's the hardest thing. Like presence is the hardest thing when you're sort of future focusing your way through to the other side, because God, it's so hard in this spot. But it really is just going, the presence will actually help you get through.
Yes.
Even though it seems impossible.
Yes.
Oof. I love that reminder for like everyone, because it is like, it, no matter the scenario, right? It's just so much like you see it everywhere. People are like, I'm just trying to get like, it's like, yes. And where are you actually being in the here and in the now? And
like, it's because so much of us, and I think so much of us as high achievers, so much of the work happens in our head, right? Like we're solving problems with our brain. Whatever it that like we are skin, cells, and hair and blood and bones. Like we are humans. We are physical creatures that need to experience and express these emotions and be present with them. And I say it's the fastest way through part for my clients who are like, I don't want to. And I'm like, okay, here's a lens on. This is actually the most efficient way. And then that kind of gets them on board with it.
It's just,
but it is this like, I love creating and I love business. I truly think business is so beautiful, like a ballet or like an orchestra playing. I love it, but I'm a person, but I'm a physical being first. And I can't let that identity swallow me up. That would require like separation for me to be able to like be a person and like give a shit about myself.
Yeah. And there was something you said earlier as well that sort of flagged for me as a beautiful reminder, because I know of women who struggle either like through divorce and still sort of working and functioning and being successful, or parenting and being successful, or both, and still trying to, like make their way through. And you were talking about how you let go of the other business portfolio, and you allowed change. And I imagine it's a time like, when these big life changes are happening, even if we choose it, sometimes we have the moments of, I just want to hang on to something because it's familiar, and I like, why can't just one thing stay the same so that way I'm safe, or whatever it is. But a lot of people, I see a lot of people sort of trying to charge through and keep doing the same thing instead of going, what do I need? How can I change this? How can I shift this? Where is my energy now?
And that's scary. That's the hard part, right? That's the risk of, if I let these things go, will I ever get any of it back? And really they're asking like, any of the sense of joy, of accomplishment, the sense of success, my sense of worth, who I am as a person. If I let this go, will I get any of it back? My answer to that is like, So unfortunately, no, you won't get that version of those things back. What you end up doing is creating this brand new, like 7.0 model of it. Like you get this massively upgraded model of all of these things, this like deeply rooted understanding of all these things, but you won't get that version back.
Mm.
That's hard. Like
Yeah.
really hard.
But on the other
You know,
side of it, you also won't want that version back as much because
you won't,
yeah.
not a, it's, it will not serve you as well as the new version you're
Mm-hmm.
going. But it's kind of like with a kid who, my son's talking about kids, has a stuffed, his name Bulldog. Bulldog has been with us. Bulldog has been to Iceland and Spain and to Arizona. Bulldog has been everywhere. And we've at multiple points have tried to swap him out for something else, a newer toy or thing that would like be, comforting in a different way. But it is just the letting go. It's the letting go of the familiarity of the thing. And it can feel like I felt the feeling I experienced the most was adrift, of just like unmoored. That's the word I would use a lot. Like I can't grab anything. Everything is changing. I can't do anything. And it's such a like sickening feeling. But if you're willing to do that, the next shore that you get to is going to be so much better. You just have to be willing to experience the unmoored feeling for as long as it takes. Get to the next shoreline.
Did you have that, like, well, it sounds like you did, but like that struggle of just that piece about, I've worked so hard for this, and it's almost focusing on the lack versus the possibilities, because of course, like, and it's hard to make progress sometimes. And when we achieve it, it's like, I've worked so hard for this. I don't want to change it because of the letting go, because like you said, what if I don't get it back? Or what if I don't get anything ever again? What if this was it?
What if this is it? Right. So I think the big piece for me, even though I talk about 1 year from now visions and kind of keep it pretty contained, the thing that I knew for sure was the longevity of my career as an entrepreneur. Like my coach used to say, like, if the whole world decided they were going to sell or we're going to trade seashells instead of money, or like Whataburger money, like I would figure out how to make money. Like I would figure out how to make shells. And wheeling with seashells all day, because that's who I am as an entrepreneur. I know I can get work. And I know that the way I would tell myself the story in my head is that, yes, and that was the year that was really hard. And that was the year that, and then it set me up for X, Y, and Z. Just like, think about the longevity of what's happening and the blip that this is on the next 25, 30 years of your life. And that's hard in the moment, but that's what kind of kept me grounded, of like, I'm not making decisions for now. If I was making decisions for now, I wouldn't do half of this shit, because none of it is fun. I'm making decisions who I want to become. And that it's like taking the focus off the result and putting it on the person who is capable of creating that result, like the version of you that's creating that result. That person can do whatever they want.
Yeah, it's who do you want to be, and being her now.
Yeah. And again, that's like challenging and requires support and kind of regular thought about it. But that's the game. Like that's you're not successful because of where you're working or what you're working on now. You're successful because you are a person who creates results. And so to create more results, we kind of use the goals as targets, but you're really just becoming the person who's capable of creating that result over and over again. That's the game we're just going to be playing until people tell me I can't work anymore or whatever.
Yeah, that was one of the greatest piece, or the most potent pieces of advice, coaching, whatever the word is, like, who do you need to be able to hold that vision, and to be able to be someone who has all of the things that you want, and be her now. Like, how would she behave? What boundaries would she hold? What conversation, how would she show up to challenging conversations? How would she show up to herself? It's all of these really beautiful, rich things that I love, but it's so powerful and it's so potent, and it comes from within as well. It's not reaching external for any power from outside of you.
Yes, that's like the core set of questions for my work, right? Is who's your 1 year from now self? Let's meet them. And what are they like? And what are they? and then apply their brain to the decisions you need to make today.
Yeah.
And it's an ongoing process, right? Because that version is always moving ahead a year, so it's always evolving.
Yeah, which is the beauty of it too, because it's exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly it. But yeah, it's that is one of those pieces that is in the short term. If these were an either or, I don't think they are, but if these were an either or of like make more money now or kind of harness and have the skill, which one would I choose? If it was about the short term, then I, would choose the money, but like I can build whatever I want. Like I am sure that I can build whatever I want now forever, period. Right. And no one can take that from me. It doesn't matter what happens. I know that. And to have that, especially as someone whose future for the last year has felt very uncertain of what is it like, and how do I make money? And I have a mortgage and a car and all of those things. The fact that I know how to make money and I know I will keep making money and I know I'll keep building things and I know how to create excellent relationships and how to model, like I know all those things. Nobody can take that from me.
Yeah.
And that's so powerful. Like that's wild.
Yeah. It's also, it comes back full circle to that crux of self-trust.
Yeah.
Because you're building this robustness in knowing who you are, while at the same time knowing that you don't know all of who you are.
Yeah.
Which is, it's just such a fun perspective as well, because it means like there's still wonder, there's still possibility, there's still the little like butterflies of, oh, what's this going to be like? But then it's also this real robust, sturdy tree with deep roots that's like, and I'm here and I got this.
Yeah. I love the analogy of the tree because it's exactly that. It's like, even if you know this is an oak tree, you don't know exactly how those branches are going to be shaped out, and you don't know which animals are going to be nesting where and when, and you don't what this rain is going to be like this season. You don't know any of those things, but like these roots are deep, and I know how to synthesize sunlight to make food. Like, the basics of what is true for you, and you can trust yourself to do what's happening externally. Yeah.
2 more questions for you before I let you go. One, and I like to ask these of most guests at least, just because it's fun sort of reflection. One is, what area of improvement are you looking for yourself next?
There's 2 of them. One is sleep, which I know sounds strange because it's currently close to midnight where I am.
Yeah.
So not tonight, in general.
Great.
As we talk about, supporting our biochemistry and all of that, like it's told me it needs more regular and more high quality sleep. So that's
and supporting our emotional state too. Like that's such a huge thing. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. That's probably my main thing, followed shortly by just the financial aftermath of a divorce. Again, it was amicable. It's not, like, oh no, we're going to be destitute, but there's a lot of like cleaning up and finishing
and moving pieces that
need to be cleaned up. And so I want to be intentional about not letting that drag on for myself or for my ex, and cleaning up my side of the table as efficiently as I can. So that's 2 pieces.
I love that. And where do you feel like this last question is, where do you feel like you get leadership and communication with yourself pretty well, like not perfectly, but where do you feel like you do it?
I'm gonna say in that quality standard for how I let people talk to me, because I include myself in that. So I now, which I had before, I have a standard for how I let me talk to me. And so
I love that.
We did some shit when I was like, oh, I can't talk to her like that because she doesn't let people talk to her like that. I can't jerk. I can't, don't ask, are you sure you made the right decision? I don't like the way that you did. Like, I can't do it. Like, because we now have a standard for how we let people talk to us. And I'm saying it is just me. But I now have that standard, and that has elevated my self-talk, that's elevated, again, just how I let other people engage with me. That's elevated how I show up for how I wake up, how I go to sleep. All of it is just like,
Mm,
here's the standard. I don't let anybody talk to me in any kind of way, including me.
yeah, that's amazing. I love that. I think that's like, I love that you are getting to celebrate that for yourself, because like, to me, a lot of these conversations that we have, a lot of the things that we're working towards, that we're working on, comes down to quality of life.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
there's different ways for it. But it's also like, but what quality of life do we want to have? And like, I have conversations, I work with soldiers a lot too, and that's what I like, that's the through point to sort of like let it land for them, right? Because it's like, you have to, you don't always get to choose your experiences. You get to choose how you show up to the experiences, but you get to choose how you value your quality of life versus deciding that you're not
Yeah. Yes. And that's like, that's been everything. That's been kind of the through line of it for me. It's just like holding that quality standard for myself and then
Mhm.
getting my life to rise to that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. I really like that. And that's a really great way to model, which is why I love having these conversations, because whoever listens to them or watches them, like, there's a modeling happening just through you sharing your experience. So I really appreciate you doing that and being so open and vulnerable, and sharing something that a lot of people would feel fear to in a lot of ways, whether they quote unquote should or not. A lot of
Yeah.
people would just feel a lot of fear about. So I appreciate it. But how can people find you? Where can they follow you and your work and everything like that?
Yes, I am most places on the internet at 1 year from now or oyfn.co. So on Instagram at oyfn.co. The website is oyfn.co. And as just said, I have a podcast called
Yes.
1 Year Podcast. And you can find that on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen.
And I have listened to that. It's really good. I like, it's great conversations, again, just about the experience and the vision and the life. So highly
Thank you.
recommend it. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And it's been such a great conversation. I could have kept going, but you've got to get to bed and get that
I gotta
sleep.
get to bed.
So
Thank you.
thank you so much.